As Father Kasicki said, it's a joy and a sorrow to be here with you guys, a joy and a sorrow. So I feel kind of that strange mix of those feelings in myself right now, standing here before each of you. It's a gift, and I take it as a gift. It's just a gift that you've made it here, so well done, and I hope you can make it home. But it's a joy and a sorrow. My name, in case anybody doesn't know, is Father Patrick Gilger. I'm a Jesuit from the Wisconsin province, from the Midwest. So I have relatives all over the Midwest, Omaha and Denver and etc. So I'm grateful to see some Regis students here. Very good. I think it might be strange, to begin talking about this march that we're going to go on by naming that mixture of joy and sadness. Like, it feels a little weird to have it mingled together. But look, today marks the 43rd anniversary of Roe v. Wade, and you know the facts. I hope many of you know them. More than 50 million abortions that have been done. All of the women who've suffered from this. The men who haven't had a choice and who miss, their sons and daughters. These things. The people who might have been sitting here with us, who were not because of it. These are things of great sorrow. And it's okay. It's just okay to feel like that. It's okay to feel some of that sadness and to let that be there in us. That doesn't mean there's no room for joy, or that what we're doing today cannot be joyful in a way. Today here, in the midst of these feelings of joy and sorrow, we're here to do two things also. And this comes straight from our bishops, and they've denoted today a day of prayer and penance for the church. Prayer and penance for the church, so that we might pray for the legal restoration of the right to life, and penance, and do penance ourselves for violations of the dignity of the human person. We know all of these things, but the question then becomes, we know kind of what we're praying for, maybe. I want to talk a little bit about that, but what are we doing penance for? What is this? Those of us here, we're here to witness to something we deeply believe in. What are we doing penance for? Just let it be a question there for a moment. We walk then today in a few hours in this strange mixture of joy and sadness, praying and doing penance. How do our readings help bring any kind of clarity to what we're doing here, and what's going on inside of us? I just want to say a few words about the way they might. So, although we don't hear it today in today's gospel from Mark, in the Gospel of Luke, talking about the same call, Luke is very explicit about what Jesus is doing right before he calls the 12. And what he's doing is simple. He's praying. And Luke says he goes up on the mountain to pray. And after praying, he calls these people. He goes up on the mountain to pray. So look, see it in your mind's eye now. And see Jesus sitting on the mountainside in the seamless garment that he's wearing, all the crowd around him. And we only hear kind of the action scenes from the gospel so often, but a lot of the time was just the between time. Like, it's when you're sitting in the pews or you're talking to people before the Mass starts. It's that kind of time. People are milling about. Some people are eating some things, they're talking, they're relaxing. And Jesus is there alone praying, and then he calls people to him. These 12 names then are the fruit of his prayer, of his intimate contact with his Father. Is asking his Father, who am I supposed to be? How am I supposed to live? These names come. And it's easy for us to kind of just read them off, to rattle them off. Yeah, we know this name and this name and this name. Yeah, we know those people. But what we might not recognize is how incredibly different they are. And it's easy just to forget it. Or just to pay attention to sometimes how ridiculous the disciples are or how much we admire them. These are people who did amazing things in their life, right? But they're also, James and John, these are two people who went up to Jesus and literally said to him, Jesus, we want you to do for us anything that we ask of you, right? I'm glad I got one laugh. That was good. Thank you. But if I was Jesus right then, that would be like a full side-eye moment, like, this is the kind of people they were, like that. He calls those 12. These are the ones who argued about who was the greatest while Jesus is walking around trying to heal the poor. These are the ones who fell asleep in the Garden of Gethsemane as he's sweating and crying out. It's hard. And there were real reasons for conflict among them that their names just hide. If we're not careful, we can miss it. In a time of tribalism, when Jesus was alive, and at a time of kind of regional specificity, he calls people from all over Judea. He calls Matthew, who's a tax collector. And some of you know this. What that really means is he's a collaborator with the enemy of the Jewish people, to many of them. So he calls to be in the center of his circle a collaborator, somebody who's cooperated with the enemy. You come and be with me. And at the same time, he calls a zealot, people who were ready to take up arms and did, right after Jesus died, take up arms and fight against the Roman Empire. Can you imagine the conversations that those two people had on the road? One of them who's a collaborator with the Romans and the other one's who's ready to try to kill them and to die. These are the kinds of people Jesus calls together. He calls together the normal people, the fishermen, and he also calls the rich young men who did not respond. How did he call them then? All of these diverse people trying to bond them together. What did he try to do? Just a couple notes. As they're arguing about which one is the greatest, he takes a child, says, you must be like this. As they're saying which one's going to be the first, he says, you must be last. When he says to them, the Son of Man has to go to Jerusalem and be crucified, and Peter says, no. He says, get behind me. He's constantly trying to confront them gently and with love, ferociously and with love, to be able to bring them together into a body, into the church. So we know today that Jesus, he is speaking your names in your diversity, and all the different places that you've come from, all the different stances that you might have, all the different ways you might feel. So even our unity against the scourge of abortion, our differences remain and they're okay. And then there's more. As he called them to act as he did, that means he calls you to act as he did as well, which means to look upon all of the people that will be around us in the march, in all the diversity there, those who are Catholic and those who are not, those who are believers and those who are not, those who agree with us in this march and those who stand on the side, to look upon them all in the same way and to do our best to call them together. It takes prayer to do something like that, an openness to the intimate love of the Father. It takes innovation to, in our own times, figure out a way to, in the midst of a fight, say, look at the child, so that everything stops for a moment and hearts are open. Prayer. But it also takes us penance, too. It also takes us penance. And it's not just what we've done wrong. It's not just what we've done wrong. Let's look at Saul and David maybe for an example of what's going on in there. Saul and David, this story, there's so many things to be said about it, and it's a little bit crazy, right? Saul goes into the cave to go to the bathroom, literally. You can remember that for when people say there's nothing ridiculous in the scriptures. Yeah, okay, look, it's right here, But look, he goes there, and David has a chance. He has a chance to someone who's trying to kill him to enact vengeance. It would have been fair in some ways. But instead, what he does is he walks out of the cave after Saul, and he falls prostrate on the ground. And then it's easy to miss, but what happens to Saul then? What happens to him? His heart changes. No. It's not David's running at him with the sword or running away from him and not confronting him. It's this strange middle ground that Jesus hits for us so well too. He comes out and he falls prostrate and he says, see what kind of a man I am. And Saul sees. This is our efforts in what we do penance for today. Our efforts in our acts of penance are to be able to create the same kind of space for people to change their hearts. It's really hard. It's really hard to do. It's much easier for us to be confident in our correctness and to be righteous and to say, I've been baptized a prophet and I'm going to speak what the prophets speak. Convert your lives. And there's a time for that. There is a time for that. But what we learn today is that we are to be imitators of David also. And as we walk out of the church, just like David walked out of the cave, and as we walk down the mall in sadness and in joy, in prayer and in penance, to do our best to fall at the feet of those who are doing the killing in hope that there will be a change of heart. To do penance then. And there are ways we can do this. I just want to offer a couple ways we can practically do this. One, ask ourselves, when's the last time we've really had a conversation, like a real conversation, speaking and listening with somebody who disagrees with us on abortion, with someone who's pro-life, that we've been able to have the courage? I feel the nervousness of it too. It's hard to bring this up. It's hard. When's the last time that we've had the courage to really listen to what's going on in somebody who disagrees, and then to do our best not just to vocalize talking points, but to look on them with love, like Jesus called the apostles, to fall prostrate at their feet, as David did? That is penance that we can do today. Another thing that we can do is be very attentive. I want to be aware of myself right here, right? As a man speaking about this issue. So I want to do, this is what my effort is, I want to do penance by listening to the experience of women, of both sides as best as I can, who are pro-life and those who are not. And I want to listen and do my best as somebody who will never be able to understand what it's like to be a poor woman. Vast majority of abortions we know are done by poor women. To understand my best as I can what it's like to be in that kind of a position and to love them and to fall prostrate at their feet. Not to give up this stance, but to do it as Jesus would. And in this year of mercy, the third thing we can do is remember to always begin with mercy, with others and with ourselves. So look, I know that there are times in my own life when I have really failed to do this, when I've approached all of these conversations with real self-righteousness and very sure that I know what the correct thing is. And generally what happens is that when I act in that way, people's hearts are not changed. People's minds are not changed. I need to be merciful with myself, go to confession if that's what's called for, and say I'm sorry for what I've done, but also have mercy on others. Whatever ways you're called today to do prayer, open up your hearts to, as Jesus did, and to look upon each other here, those of us who are united and doing our best to stand strong in this issue, and all of those we will encounter, those who agree and those who don't, to look upon them in a prayerful way and to do penance too. Yeah, even if we ourselves are not guilty of this, as a part of this community of the United States of America, we are bound to this. We know this, as Cardinal O'Malley said last year on this day. He said, the antidote to abortion is solidarity. And a community where people are willing to care for one another and for the most vulnerable. This is our task again today, to create a community of solidarity in a prayerful way by doing penance for our own wrongs, so that we can be a community of diversity, knowing that we are called the same way Jesus looked upon these vastly different people scattered in front of him in the crowd and called them by name.